Hi, everybody. This is 1,752 days since Richard was forcibly removed from his barracks room on Fort Bliss because he was a whistleblower and a witness. Okay, a whistleblower and a witness to the cartel-tied military criminal trafficking that was going on base that was connected to the Walmart mass shooting case. Um, that was a bloody orchestration to divert attention from the audits and the investigations going on from the criminal trafficking on Fort Bliss because Richard was whistleblowing and a witness. And they were investigating and they were under audits. And this was a diversion, the Walmart mass shooting, to divert the um, the law enforcement community, the public attention away from the cartel corruption that had been allowed to embed itself in Fort Bliss and in the criminal judicial system in El Paso. And also, this was a double doozer. Well, it was a triple doozer because they absolutely were so bold to do a grand theft mutiny. The application for appointed counsel, that was fast tracked on the morning of Sunday, August 4th, 2019 at 5:42 a.m. to be, the door that opened up the checkbook of taxpayer funds to this, Joe Spencer, the defense attorney, and Sam Madrano, and of course, Judge Sam Madrano, who wasn't originally on the case, right? It was Judge Burrell. Um, and but they really, evidence shows that they were scheming. I mean, 5:42 a.m. on a Sunday morning, an application for appointed counsel and open checkbook. That's the open checkbook. Got approved for Patrick Crusius, saying he had zero income, zero expenditures, zero, 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 zero in every line, on every line, in every little box. It was zero, 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 zero. You can see it for yourself. I've loaded up the application and it is absolutely clear that it's a fraud. Because where did he get all the money that he was spending? Um, where did he get the money? And those are expenditures. And it took a lot of money, a lot of gas money, a lot of internet, a lot of bullets, a lot of guns, a lot of organization. So, and then of course, him being family members with the Mayellas, who had, uh, a place right there. Make sure that everything is working. The Mayellas, who had a place in every aspect of this, in the managing the federal courthouse, in the DA's office with James Montoya under Jaime Esparza when he was a district attorney, in the FBI El Paso field office with Eddie Nieto, who his wife was working in intelligence on Fort Bliss, um, and has all of these cartel ties, right? All of these cartel ties, and his wife is working intelligence on Fort Bliss, and you have the Mayellas working in that field office, and then in the Walmart cybersecurity, and Michael G. Mayella, who was working in the Walmart cybersecurity, is a trained hacker. He is a cyber security technician and trained hacker. You can go look it up, right? Unless they're wiping it off. But so Patrick, that's Patrick Crusius's family. When you hear Mayella, that's Patrick Crusius's family. Patrick Crusius did not just randomly pick Fort Bliss. Patrick Crusius was not alone. See, this is the thing. The narrative was this lone shooter, right? And anyone that witnessed against it, anyone that put up a story against it, was bullied, like Glennon Oakley Jr., right? Glennon Oakley Jr. was bullied before it got so bad. Before he was so retaliated against for him being a witness to the multiple shooters, right? A witness to evidence absolutely confirming that there were multiple shooters on the day of the Walmart mass shooting. But he's not the only one, y'all. I put up a whole list of the witnesses that absolutely confirmed that there were multiple shooters, but they were taken down. They were bullied. They were intimidated. And the stories that the media was allowed to put out was only Patrick Crusius, a lone shooter. Patrick Crusius in a hate crime. Patrick Crusius, and every bit of that, um, it needed to be scrutinized with a trial. But what did we get? We got delays, 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 while grand theft of taxpayer funds through this application, um, was paying for what? For nothing. For miscellaneous expenses. I mean, that's what comes out, and the media is not even scrutinizing that. Miscellaneous expenses. Um, and the monies are absolutely far more than what they're telling us. Because of the years and years of research, finding other articles, talking to other people that have, and putting our FOIAs in for those amounts of money, and it just doesn't add up. They're absolutely they're fudging. They're fudging. If someone's nose is really growing long, someone's nose is really growing long because it doesn't match up. And so Patrick Crusius absolutely did not work alone. There's absolute and why did the media want to get out that story? Well, because that's how Google searches work. That's how AI searches work. If you go on to AI right now and you ask Alexa or you go on to Google, they will take their information from articles. And so they have to prevent any articles that have a different opinion for getting a force multiplier, right? Getting out there, and people reading it, because then the AI, the Google, whenever you're researching, will come back and tell you Patrick Crusius is this lone shooter, hate crime, all this stuff, and it doesn't tell you the cartel tied, the military tied, the cartel embedding on Fort Bliss, the weapons, the whole weapons thing, the soldier that witnessed multiple shootings, the other witnesses, the death of Alexander Hoffman, uh, and his ties, and what's going on with the theft of the Walmart mass shooting victims funds, the fraud that is in that, and that's over $12 million. So this was, they don't tell you about the contracts involved. They don't tell you about the politics involved. Absolutely, where is Governor Abbott in all of this? He was at the beginning, he was, getting his take, getting his take on it, but it didn't end up the way they wanted it. They didn't end up the way they wanted it. Thank God. Thank God. And, we hope that we had something to do with getting the truth out there to get the grand theft stopped, right? Stop. The case has been officially closed. And now we need accountability. Now we need to hold Joe Spencer and the open checkbook Joe Spencer and judge the most corrupt judge in El Paso history, Madrano. We need to hold them accountable for what they did, right? And of course, Bill Hicks and James Montoya. James Montoya, absolutely. Um, he is not. This is the problem. They have um, sabotaged the DA's office there. So if you want a prosecutor, you're saying, well, why isn't anything happening? Why isn't the FBI? Why isn't this happening? Um, it's because they sabotaged the local office of the FBI. They sabotaged the medical examiner. They sabotaged the DA's office. They sabotaged the judges there in the criminal law magistrate court. They manage the federal courthouse. Um, they're absolutely um, embedded with the cartels, and it's been sabotaged. It's been sabotaged. And Fort Bliss also. And Fort Bliss Jag. So not only the generals are absolutely the worst of the worst, y'all. They're so bad. I mean, there's 44 four-star generals, and I can tell you, Mealy, McConville, um, Kelly, and um, Garrett were also, they all are so bad. They're just the worst type of criminals. Um, you can't even put them when they're wearing our uniforms and wearing our stars and entrusted with the most powerful military and the amount of funding that we give our military. Okay, we give our military so much funding, so we entrust so much with them, and they have that, and they're using it against our country. I mean, they're absolutely treasonous, right? They're absolutely treasonous. So you just have to say it's so worse. It's worse than like El Mayo, right? It's worse than El Mayo, and El Mayo is pretty bad. But you know, he is a cartel leader, right? Bringing in so much, killing people, but the military leadership allowed the passes onto Fort Bliss, allowed the hiring of cartel operatives, allowed the soldiers to be cartel tied, especially in Richard's unit, several of them. Um, so yeah, it's just where are the NCOs? I mean, that is the Sergeant Major School is there, right? The NCO school. The NCOs, Command Sergeant Major Jakovitz was shaking so bad in front of us, admitting about this smuggling girls onto base during the COVID lockdown to party, and there's all these drugs and all these weapons, and they're under audit, but yet they want to smuggle these young girls on to compromise our soldiers, right? Because they film all the actions going on during these parties. And yeah, so that's compromising our military. And he's shaking so bad in front of us that we called him Shaky Jake, right? We just said, okay, Shaky Jake. That all needs to, I mean, it all needs to come out. And um, and they all need to be held accountable. And it's not like some kind of vendetta or anything like that. It is like for our country, for our son's sake, for Glenn and Oakley Jr. So many of our sons and daughters that join with the hopes of serving honorably, and learning, right? And being trained. And Richard was so excited. And we have the letter from Fort Bliss, from his basic training that shows you what his mindset was. He was so excited. And of course, he was the number one. He was number one. He was a distinguished honor graduate for basic training. His hopes were just incredible. He put everything that he had into it, and that's why he was number one. And he was, of course, the guidon bearer, and was promoted before his peers with waivers, and he was a whistleblower witness to this cartel embedded criminal trafficking going on in Fort Bliss that's connected to the Walmart mass shooting, orchestrated mutiny against the audits and the investigations that were underway in El Paso and on Fort Bliss, and also the investigations into Walmart. Walmart, there's a lot of businesses, okay, that were being investigated, but Walmart was also going through a scandal with its gift cards. Criminal traffickers would use the gift cards to launder the money. And so, yeah, so this is getting very, very clear who's what and what happened. And now we have the new FBI director, Kash Patel, and his deputy, Dan Bongino, that were interviewed today. We watched that very carefully, and you can absolutely understand that this is a level 10, in their portfolio. They've been hit with a lot of level 10s in their portfolio, and this is a level 10 in their portfolio. And I'll describe why. It's a national security threat. It is a compromising of our sons and daughters that volunteer to be in the military. It is, it's just the border region, and compromising with foreign countries, because the Mexican cartels, the Sinaloa cartel, they're absolutely known to have strings attached to the CCP. So this is, when you have General Kelly or General Mealy or General McConville or General Garrett, facilitating this kind of criminal trafficking, absolutely facilitating it, okay? Then their bank accounts need to be audited, right? Because I don't think they're facilitating it for nothing, not for nickels and dimes. Joe Spencer wanted an open checkbook, millions of dollars, and I'm sure that these four-star generals, that they weren't facilitating this cartel-tied criminal trafficking in the military, using military fuel, using military vehicles, using military resources in all respects, while actively facilitating, compromising, and endangering our sons and daughters, our volunteer sons and daughters that joined to serve in the military with honor, and yet they were being set up. They were being set up. Jesus has a saying, uh, about those that put a stumbling block, in front of his children, um, and to tempt them and to compromise them and to put them in terrible situations. You can just put a millstone around your neck and throw yourself in the abyss. You know, God doesn't have anything nice to say for leaders that wear our beautiful uniforms, our beautiful stars, and take the resources that we've entrusted to them, and take the UCMJ that we've entrusted to them, and weaponize it against their own service members against the United States of America, against the people using taxpayer money and facilitating and allowing and working with the compromised criminal justice system there in El Paso to continue to facilitate the cartel trafficking, criminal trafficking. And if you need to be convinced even more with, like, oh, show me some evidence, because we have evidence. Why would I be on this live saying this to you if I didn't have evidence? But the big evidence that was just, the big elephant in the room, right? The biggest elephant in the room. And if you couldn't see them, paint the toes red, right? Paint the elephant's toes red, because it was so obvious. Tens of thousands of children, well, hundreds of thousands of children, 10,000 at a time, being trafficked through the emergency intake center on Fort Bliss, using United States military resources that come from taxpayers now, taxpayer money, right, were being used to facilitate this horrendous death camp. This horrendous, that's not my name for it, that's the name that they gave it, the death camp, where hundreds of thousands of children were trafficked, and they don't know where they're at. They've located, what, 50, 70,000 of them, but we're talking about hundreds of thousands of them, and most of them are now mostly dead. And this is not me. This is congressional hearings. This is absolutely, you can find it anywhere. It's out there, and that's enough. That's enough to absolutely be able to get on. And there's more to it, right? Because of the guns and the ammunition and all the drugs and all this other criminal trafficking, right? The 14-year-old girl living in the barracks for 4 months, y'all. 4 months. This 14-year-old girl was living in the barracks, being compromised and compromising our our soldiers there on Fort Bliss, our service members, okay? Because if you don't want whistleblowers, right? Or if you want to continue to facilitate this kind of billion-dollar criminal trafficking, then you've got to control the whistleblowers, right? And the way they did it was to compromise them. That's why they allowed all the alcohol and all the parties and all the girls coming in, the young girls, all the videos being made, which was then called the worst kind of child videos that were illegal, right? And and they compromised our soldiers, and the upper ranks got compromised in different ways, right? And that's why their bank accounts and their benefits need to be scrutinized, need to be audited, because did they get paid for play? Did they get yeah, pay for play? Did they get that to go along with this criminal trafficking, the national security threat, aiding and abetting a foreign country, um, on our, this is just like top level treason, and people go, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. It's not treason. No, no, I know what I'm talking about. This is aiding and abetting a foreign country against the United States of America, millions and millions of dollars, billions of dollars, while compromising our soldiers, risking their lives. And of course, our son, Richard Halliday, the whistleblower witness, who was not compromised. They tried, but he didn't take the bait. And he was just sparkling clean, was willing to be a whistleblower witness to this and to the Walmart mass shooting, um, cover up, the orchestration of it, the lies surrounding it. Um, Absolutely. This is very, very clear. now what has been going on. And you see that with Brady, with Colonel Brady, interfering, obstructing, working alongside Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe in their treason. And, they were just absolute traitors to our country and to our service members, to our military, to our taxpayers, because using fuel, using vehicles, using tactical move storage units, using guards, using everything, and using LLCs, right? LLCs with contracts, no bid contracts or fraud bid contracts. We saw that the no bid contract for the renovation of the crime scene that we believe is the crime scene, which is the arms room. No bid, and no expense spared to renovate the arms room in Richard's building, in the building where Richard lived, his barracks room. So, his barracks, yeah. So, this is the evidence is huge. And then they sealed the door, right? They sealed the door. We have the seal number. Um, so, the evidence keeps piling up as we go back and look at everything that was given to us that maybe we missed something. And we do, because at the beginning we had no, we did not, we couldn't think as evil as they are. We just don't think as evil as they are. And so now, knowing all the facts, we can go back and revisit the evidence that we have as we're getting new and new evidence in. And you see that from FBI Director Kash Patel, who has been investigating too this for years. And he's like, now I'm going back as I understand what was happening and I find new evidence, right? You find new evidence. You might have read through it years ago, but once you have a bigger picture, things pop out and the evidence becomes very, very clear. So we absolutely understood the interview that him and Deputy Dan Bongino had with Maria Bartoloma. I think that's her name. Um, it was a very interesting interview. I'm hoping to put a couple of parts up that were very, very telling. And I can tell you this, that Richard's case is a level 10. It's a level 10 in their portfolio. It's huge because it's about treason. It's about really a national security threat. And you saw that because President Trump on January 20th addressed it right away. Many, many things on the border. And then 4 days later, he addressed Richard's case in the line of duty, in the line that he was killed in the line of duty on Fort Bliss, y'all, on Fort Bliss. So this put a whole new legal perspective on the case. And, and so now, the question is to the people in El Paso, to American taxpayers everywhere and the world over, are you going to listen to the propaganda? Are you going to let Joe Open Checkbook Spencer with millions of dollars charged for what? For a hug and a plea deal? A hug and a plea deal, and the other shooters walking at large? Who did the executed headshot on the German national? Are Germans going to put up with this? Because let me tell you, it uh, nothing adds up except for other shooters. And you want at large someone that executed a German national? I just want to ask the Germans that. Um, you know, so this is, and let Joe Spencer just charge millions for this, and let Sam Madrano do the seals and the deals and gag for the longest time. He had a gag order. Didn't let anyone talk about it, because if you talk about it, it gets in the news. It has to be reported in the news. It gets on X, right? Grok is X. The AI Grok is X, so it'll go through all the X posts. And you can X post, that Patrick Crusius was not acting alone. He was not acting alone. There were multiple shooters, and there was a lot of collusion and conspiracy in this mutiny, in this grand theft mutiny, that is absolutely attached to the murder of the Fort Bliss whistleblower and witness Richard Halliday, who's a hero. Who He's an absolute hero, and I say that very, very humbly. And I'm just so honored to be his mother. I'm very honored to be his mother. He's just an absolute hero. So, and we need to remember him, and we need to honor him, and we need to get accountability, and we need to get his remains, right? Because they have his remains. They don't give us his remains, because his remains is evidence. It's huge evidence, of their treason, of their treason. It's not just evidence of a murder; it's evidence of treason. And so, this is, very, very important for us to continue, and we're very, very grateful. Thank you, Anicia, for coming on, for your prayers and your love, and especially, here it is. We're burning the midnight oil again. But this is, the question for El Pasoans, for Americans. Do you want to give them a pass? Do you want to give them a pass, or do you want them to be held accountable? Do you want them to be able to go and play their golf and keep the money? And I'm talking about Greg Abbott. I'm talking about Veronica Escobar. I'm talking about Joe Spencer. I'm talking about Sam Madrano. I'm talking about so many, right? So many, these generals and that. Do we want to give them a pass? I don't want to give them a pass. No way. Because, um, then you're not restraining any kind of evil. They're just going to, and people, that are watching will absolutely take this as a business plan, and continue this cartel trafficking that is just hurting so many, and is really, an act against our country. So, really, that's the huge news, that Ken Paxton, lawsuit, that, El Paso doesn't want to be transparent to Ken Paxton. Um, eh, so that lawsuit we are absolutely watching. And then, of course, the interviews with, um, FBI Director Kash Patel and Deputy Dan Bongino. Watch those. It's, amazing. We have a lot of things going on behind the scenes. And I want to tell you, it's just a miracle. It's really a miracle what's going on. And as soon as I'm at liberty to tell you, I will absolutely tell you. But you see, even in the news, if you're aware of this case, you will see that things are happening. And, we, yeah, things are happening. And as soon as I can, I will tell you. But those are good indicators, what I just mentioned. So thank you so much. God bless you. And oh, yeah, the Brady stuff, the Colonel Brady stuff. I think, as we go, I hate to, a colonel, or, even just a one-star general, or, that's why for a long time, Stewart, he's a two-star general, and Clem Coward. Um, but they're so guilty, right? They're just, well, they're so implicated. I should say that, implicated. And as a mom of Richard, I don't want to, um, tell anyone, um, that I'm easy on these demons, that I feel like they've crawled out a fissure, a little cavity out of hell, to, wreak havoc on us. Um, you know, but, we do have to, uh, really do this right legally for the sake of our country, for the sake of our military, and to get that restitution, to do this right. And we can't do it right with Montoya, right? We can't do this right with James Montoya. He's a real, real problem. And that's why they're leaving him in. And that's why the media, who's complicit and implicated in all of this crime, are not calling for his resignation. His 2028 stamp is pretty tough, and we have notified everyone about that we can think of, right? Everyone that we can think of, um, uh, that he is just a fraudulent. Uh, uh, he, he's nothing he touches will be legal. Nothing he touches. Everything will be botched, and including any kind of cooperation with the federal agencies. Okay, if the federal agencies want to use the DA's office there in El Paso for any of this uh, law enforcement, those cases will be botched. Really, potentially, they will be really botched. Um, so he needs to be outed. He needs to be outed. James Montoya cannot be there. Um, of course, his um, his conflicts of interest with the Ambreses, his conflicts of interest with the cartels, is that that really gets terrible. But the main, I mean, it is, and he needs to be held accountable for all of that. But the main point right now is, if we're going to do this right, he cannot stay in there, for the sake that we need a legitimate DA. We need a legitimate DA in that office, a legitimate prosecutor. And they're working very, very hard to prevent that. And can you imagine? Can you imagine? All that taxpayer money for a prosecutor, and we don't have a legitimate prosecutor. Yeah. So that's pass that news on, please. Um, and I'll be back tomorrow, um, God willing. Thank you.